Right, so this is not Hurry Hurry. This is actually used to be a little cafe site run by Peter Salter, who is also known as Anti-1080 Man. Used to be a great big huge sandfly on there, which he used to tell the tourists that that's the average size of the sandflies around there. Pete was a bit of a, he liked to joke, but also had a very serious side, a bushman and a huntsman, had a very, very deep understanding, a deep professional understanding of what was going out there in the environment. And this is different a lot of the time from your people in Wellington. So you get people who are smart, they look at information, it makes all complete sense to them. They look, it's like this, we used to talk about this in the army, that you look at a map and you go, oh, that's that distance to that distance. But it's not till you actually sort of put your boots on the ground and you walk up the incline that you start to realise, well, actually two-dimensional information isn't necessarily have the same value as boots on ground. So there we are, warning 1080 poisoning. This is used widespread all up and down the west coast. There are arguments for 1080. I do point out, however, that we use 95% of the world's 1080 versus North America. Continent North America only uses 2%. And I've heard lots of ridiculous arguments about, oh yes, but blah, blah, blah. And like, that's no. We just get bombarded with this stuff. I've heard arguments from other huntsmen who, people who've actually trained the SAS, and they do make good arguments for using 1080 strategically. But I also used to get on a plane, probably about 6 to 8 weeks, every 2 or 3 months I'd been on a plane and Rod Donaldson would be there, and if the seat was available I'd sit down there, or vice versa, walking past, and so we'd chat. And he explained that there were many alternatives to combating the issue of pests and vermin and so on, and it didn't have to be just 1080, and it probably shouldn't be 1080 at all, but for the psychological message that it was passing on to people that, chemicals are okay, and even think pharmaceuticals is wonderful. And he thought that was a very dangerous road for us to actually go down there. He wrote a number of very wonderful papers. He was the co-leader for Gene Fitzsimmons, sorry, I want to say Fitzgerald. For years as co-governors, very, very widely respected people from both sides of the political party, admired their professionalism. And they, from Rod's viewpoint, like when he was replaced, and he had all these wonderful papers he'd written online, when they were replaced by James Shaw, who's a former public relations for PricewaterhouseCoopers, a company not with a very good ethical record and becoming less ethical as we understand more and more about their dodgy accounting. And then he worked for Bayer, and I often say Bayer Monsanto, but that's a bit cheeky because Bayer and Monsanto hadn't yet merged when James worked for them. But they were effectively still working at the hip. It was only when Monsanto got done for its glyphosate causing, and I think it was $10-11 billion, they went into Chapter 11, and then they amalgamated and became Bayer Monsanto. But the culture that those organisations were very much always in, and they spent massive amounts of money on very, very, very clever marketing, understanding of psychology, propaganda, and they did a real number on us. So again, when we look at books like Seeds of Distrust written by Nicky Hager in 2008, it's really disturbing to see. Nicky's a guy that I've known as a colleague for a while, and I've got a lot of time for Nicky, and he's done a lot of very, very good stories. But I've sort of sat there a couple of times and said, Nicky, you got this issue where protesters have come out against because of things that you and the Greens were telling us, and protesters of my age, and now they're protesting against those things which you told us that we should protest against, and now you're trying to kind of like, you won't actually be drawn on that, and you're trying to make out, the protesters bringing it all outright, which it has, but it's largely done so because people like Nicky for one, they wouldn't come and actually engage the many people at Wellington protests who weren't anti-vaccines. There were people there for numerous reasons, in terms of they believed there was constitutional overreach, or they saw that they were going to lose jobs, and Nicky made this move to put everybody in the same circus, which is what everybody else did, and now he won't be drawn actually on that particular comment. So again, the frustration things I see when I see, one of the reasons why Peter packed up the space was that he saw New Zealand activist issues getting taken over by these groups that had deep pockets and they had their own agenda, and what they saw on these courses like 1080, which had a lot of people very, very upset because the grassroots numbers were much larger than they said, and the constant people in that scene, that constant downplaying and propaganda saying, if you believe that 1080 is a terrible thing, like you're not scientifically minded, and all this very, very clever stuff, marketing And pretty much, well, they jumped on these purposes to get that popularity, so they can push the other agendas, which became increasingly more right wing and free marketeer, which is what the Nicky's saying. But it's again the understanding about the opportunism here. It's not that the people like loyal actually give a damn about 1080. It's the fact of the matter is that they see it as a way to get votes, and this is what happened with the TPA, and this is what has happening with the Voices of Freedom, where again using outside, like we were saying at the moment, the 1080 Doc can't even afford to do 1080 anymore, which is one of the good news story, largely because of petrol costs and so on. But instead they're getting sponsorship from overseas private patrons, and and that raises a whole, that's a whole series of rabbit hole I'll go down another day. But the point is, we are increasingly basically in a situation where people deep pockets are able to come in and basically push their own agenda and use sort of activism movements, get around spending caps to rot the entire electoral process. And nobody wants to have the discussion about that or address how we manage to do that and how we also make sure we actually have genuine independent activism and genuine independent media. And I'll leave you on that note because, basically what we're up against is the invisible zombies that are overtaking us. So be aware, be aware, be alert for invisible politicals and zombies. They might be wake zombies, they might be woke zombies, but they're there to sell you an agenda or hijack an agenda to sell you their own particular issue.